Okay, so we are live. And let me just check YouTube and then make sure we have sound there. I should probably end up in some kind of weird weirdness. Hopefully not. Oh, it says upcoming. Should say live. Let's see. Still says, didn't I go live? I went live. I did. That's weird. It doesn't seem to be working. Okay. Am I in the wrong one? Late night hang. Yeah, it's the right one. All right, let's try restarting it. I don't see anything live right now within YouTube. Weird. All right, we might just skip the streaming to our platform. Oh, yeah, it is. Oh, no, it's working. All right, hold on. Let me make sure it's actually on. Okay. Yep. That's all I needed to hear. All right, it is working. So we're good. We are good. All right. So thanks so much, Peachy, for joining us on our late night, for us, early morning or morning GM. So GM Peachy, because it's GM somewhere, always. How are you doing?
I love that. I'm great, but how are you guys holding up? I saw a couple cups of coffee on the timeline. How are things going for you so far?
I am like, I hit a wall a couple hours ago. So I'm hanging on by a thread, but you know, this is the last part and I get to like sit down and chill and just hang for a little bit. So it's good. Now that I know everything's working right. So,
and every time I want to complain, I think about the load that Nounish Prof has been handling this entire day. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I can't complain.
It's been fine. It's been fine.
I'm not a yapper, guys. I don't know why I decided to do the show because it's a yapping show, but like, I'm actually not a yapper. It's exhausting.
It is exhausting. It is absolutely exhausting. And feel free to request to come up if you want to join us on stage and chat and yap about things. Adrian, how has this day been? Like, what's been your favorite parts and what do you think?
I can't even, I'm like not ready to even process. I feel like it's just been go, 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 despite planning in breaks. I feel a little overwhelmed, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel that. I definitely feel that. Peachy, I would love to know, did you have a chance to see anything around the State of Farcaster report, perchance? I just wanted to get, I don't know if you've had a chance to even see any of that content or caught any of that.
I did. I was actually taking screenshots and thinking of some stuff to kind of overlay and compare them to. I thought it was really interesting, and I'm really glad they took that initiative to do that. It was really, really cool.
Oh, that's awesome. And I haven't dove into the full report yet. Just like pieces, and we saw some previews of it. So I'm looking forward to like reading all the way through, but I was like dying to get your take on that.
Yeah, it feels like one of those Fortune 500 Morningstar reports that would be a benchmarking report kind of thing. So it feels like really professional, and you know, there's a lot of like really interesting data to dive into, especially around like some of the demographics and who's here. And there was actually a map of like where everybody's from. And I was shocked because I always think we hear this narrative that Farcaster is like very American, very European, very English speaking, but the people who filled out the survey were really quite global. And America was kind of a really small portion. I think like 16%, and Asia was 41%. So I think there's a really big contingent of Farcasters that are, you know, active on the platform that a lot of us just don't see because we're in completely different circles because of language barriers right now.
I think you're right. That was very surprising to me. Like I knew there was a pretty large Asian contingent, but I was shocked that it was larger than the North American contingent. Like that was really interesting for sure. Adrian, was there any like things that jumped out at you from that report and that whole like thing? I know your brain's fried, but
I'm thinking.
do the best you can.
Because the answer is yes. The answer is yes.
I just can't remember what
But
it was.
I feel like you're going to want me to actually tell you what jumped out.
Yeah. That's what I was hoping for. Yeah.
And
that's funny. There was some really interesting demographic stuff. Like when I did my quick little poll and as to how many women were on the platform, and it came up like 30, I think it came up 37%. And I was like, that seems high. That can't be right. And theirs came up 34%. And I think that is where we're at. So that to me was like very positive direction that that we're going in terms of getting a little more balance gender wise. So that was very cool.
Yeah, Farcasters for girls. We know that.
Yeah, Farcasters for girls. Yeah, absolutely. Newsflash. Yeah. And there was something else I wanted to ask you, Peachy. Oh, I know what else I wanted to ask you about. Channels, the changes to channels that are being worked on and discussed and things like that. I saw your comment about the dev call, and I don't know if you've had time to see Dan's chat with us this morning. It is going to replay in a couple hours. And it's also available recorded on YouTube. But we did talk a little bit about that, and he was clarifying a few things. But I wanted to get your take on what you'd like to see from channels, and in sort of your first reaction to that dev call from yesterday.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because I don't actively moderate it anymore. But when the ham channel, the LP channel first came online, I helped moderate that channel back when we had co-hosts and things. So I kind of look at this from two very different perspectives because I have some small cozy corner channels that I think this is going to work extremely well for. And then, but I've also seen the other side of having what I'm calling like a stadium channel with, thousands and thousands of people in it and how that works. And those are the channels I'm a little more afraid for, the communities that have just exploded around, particular like Moxie and DGen and Ham that have really big, vibrant communities around them. I think that's going to be a little bit harder to kind of have these smaller, nuanced conversations when it's meant to be broadcast. So I think if the auto mod rules can kind of still come into play, I think those channels can be managed. My concern today was I think maybe Dan and Brian were having a conversation and it came up about this kind of concept of maybe the speakers versus the audience, and those who are invited to the channel are the speakers and everyone else can kind of read along. And someone said, well, it's not a big deal, right? Because they can still reply. And then Dan replied and said, well, it'll show up and show more replies. And that was like a big red flag for me because to me, that's the spam bucket right now. Show more replies, not the, not invited to participate bucket. So I'm really looking for some more nuance and clarification around that because I know that a lot of small channels, we set up these channels in particular to help people be visible and be seen and making sure they don't have to have a power badge, or anything like that to be active in the channel. And I worry sometimes that some of these new channels might make things more cozy, but might make it harder for new people to find their tribe and find their place. Because if you're new, nobody knows to invite you. So I'm hoping that there will be some happy medium or maybe a bit of a transition or, an easier way to kind of label maybe who's not a member of the channel versus who we think is an actual, AI ChatGPT spam bot who's just regurgitating stuff other people said. So that's kind of my initial thing, but I have not caught the YouTube replay, and I definitely want to hear it. And I'm trying to get my hands on that channel spec to kind of see where it's going, because I'm excited for Cozy Corners, but I worry about some of the big channels and how they're going to take a channel of 50,000 people and make it cozy. And maybe they can't, and maybe that's what we're going towards is, a mix of truly Twitter and Reddit, and kind of leaning more into subreddits and making our own spaces. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, I don't know if 50,000 anything is ever cozy. It's hard to, it's like hard to imagine that. You know what I thought was really interesting, and Peachy and Prof, I don't know if you remember Dan talking about the college analogy about like this. Yeah, so this morning you talked about like when you go to college in that first week, they've got like the big expo fair of like, here are all the clubs and how you can find your people. We don't have that at all today, which is like there's no discovery. But if the channels become super cozy, what I thought was interesting, and Prof, I don't know if you saw this yet, but he tagged you in today. So Bricks Bounty at Bricks Bounty casted 8 days ago this concept of going to like about meeting friends in college. Did you see it?
I saw the tag and I didn't get a chance to like read it.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of thought
I wonder.
And I'm like, I got to go back in and figure out what this is.
Yeah. Dan saw it a week ago and it's been in his head, but
interesting.
He said, here, I'll read it. It says, I thought about building cohorts of community on an ongoing basis here in Farcaster. Went to college, didn't know anyone before I arrived, made friends, shared experiences, learned a lot, bonded with folks who shared similar experiences at the same point in time. I've been hearing a lot of sentiment about how one aspect of what folks like about Farcaster is the community, the friends, and quite often I might suggest these bonds build across a wide variety of interests. Here we often connect with folks across a spectrum of shared interests. I think there's an opportunity for a community or team to create ongoing bonding experience for incoming and new users here in Farcaster, a bit akin to the campy nature of college orientation. Farcaster mode, thinking about TED, Hunger Games launched when direct casts were first shipped. That was Cassie, right? Cassie did the Hunger Games?
Yeah, that was Cassie.
Okay. Yep. The IRL events and meetups, and now the burgeoning communities forming around Tavern, shout out, and Farhouse spaces. And then there's some more. But
yeah, that's really, and I think, what you were expressing, Peachy, was our similar concern was like the discovery aspect of like, how does somebody new even find these channels or become a part of that community? And that is something that I'm a little worried about. But I do think that they are also thinking about that. So I'm hoping that that leads to maybe even in general, better discovery of channels. And when you said 50,000 isn't cozy, I would push back on that a little bit. And I know, and this sounds weird, but like the Nouns channel is 93,000. It doesn't feel big. It doesn't feel like a stadium. It still feels cozy because it has a focus. So I think it depends on the channel. I think when you're talking about something like Base or Ethereum or something really big, like broad scope, then it is harder. Actually, I wouldn't even say that about Base, but like something like the Ethereum channel, something like, politics or you know what I mean, like big topics. I think it does make it challenging to find community in there, but you may find a subset of community within some of those larger spaces. It's possible, but yeah, it's really, I think for the smaller channels, it's going to be really helpful for sure. So we'll see how it all plays out. I think it also is going to be helpful for existing communities. And what I'm thinking about is DAOs and those kind of already existing groups. I'm thinking more of the smaller DAOs, not necessarily Nouns, but that I think that's going to be helpful as well to sort of bring them together and allow them to manage the experience a little bit better. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to, I'm glad that they're making some moves and putting some focus and putting some energy into this to see if we can make some improvement there. So what else did I think what else did I miss on the timeline about this? Because I've been away. Go ahead, Peachy.
No, I was just gonna say, I think you're right that like some channels are huge, but still feel cozy because they're well moderated, and they're more like the analogy I always hear of like the 1%, the 9%, and then like the 90% lurkers. I think for a lot of those big channels, they feel small because there's a lot of lurkers who just want to like see what's going on, but they don't necessarily want to post every day. So I feel like that's the difference where, like you're saying with nouns, I never look in there and get overwhelmed by the feed saying, oh, this is all nonsense. Like it's pretty well curated. And the same thing, I mean, notwithstanding the retro grant round for purple, but like normally the purple channel is really useful and really high signal, but a ton of people follow it, right? Because it's gated to holders right now. And then anyone can kind of reply and get in on the conversation. But I think, like in your case, you're talking about DAO specifically, right? There could be something really interesting there where only members of the DAO can participate in the conversation, and that keeps the signal really, really high. And then as a channel owner, you just have some incentive of like, how do you invite people into that space or have a conversation that's wider? Maybe that goes into a different channel, or maybe you have to change your channel settings for a week, to get real feedback. So I think that'll be the more interesting nuanced thing, is like, how do we keep it friendly and open, but like make it clear like what channels are for small conversations and what channels are for big broadcasts. I think it has a lot of potential, but I think it's going to be a shakeup, right? Because now our default behavior is there's a button, right, that says like click here for more distribution, pick a channel. So we've been trained to like choose channels, and now they kind of want to flip it around where it's like, no, pick your home feed most of the time and pick your channel when you want to narrowcast. So I think that's just a really large behavior shift that's going to take a while for people to overcome because we've literally trained them the opposite.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that's it's just going to be a behavior shift, and I think depending on how it works out and the specifics around the changes, I think if you're in favor of the change, it's going to be a little easier and you'll make the adjustment. But if it's somehow ruining or altering your experience in a negative way, then it's going to be a lot harder, obviously. But I do think one of the things you just said reminded me of something from the State of Farcaster report was, the 99.1, in that they found one of the things that they found was a lot higher level of engagement. And I think it was especially with Power Badge users, if I remember correctly. And that was interesting for sure, because that's I think, a big positive for Farcaster, that there's that higher level of engagement than you see in other social media. So it is acting definitely still more like a social network, and that's good to have that kind of confirmation.
Yeah, it was definitely fascinating because I had never really seen the user numbers by month, because that's not really the data I looked super hard at. And they actually had user numbers posted. And I thought it was really interesting because I track power badges based on the month you joined. So, for instance, in their report, they said that about 120,000 FIDs were created in February 2024. But as of last week, only 117 people who joined that month had a power badge. So it's really interesting to kind of see that, content creator, power user versus lurker at that scale. Because I always assume that there aren't many lurkers here because so many people are having conversations and are talking to each other. Like I consider no one a lurker. Like everyone's here to have conversation. So that number was just really startling for me, to think that there's another 100,000 people that I've never talked to at all because they're just hanging out or they've, gone on. But like that my cohort of peers is much smaller than I think in comparison to the whole network.
Adrian, were you going to say something? Oh, I saw you on mute, so I thought you were saying, adding to that. Go ahead.
That's because I just like to click my computer. Am I the only one?
That's what the emojis are for in the bottom.
I haven't gotten enough exercise today, so I have this
You're
pent up.
clicking your computer.
I'm just clicking. I think the 90, like the 90-10 or 99-1 rule, dances still applies. Like I still think there's a lot of people who are not, who aren't replying, casting, and are just lurking on the feed.
Yeah, but I'm not sure it's still hitting 99.1, but maybe it is. I'm not sure. But in terms of like those who are, the daily active users, I think have a higher level of engagement than on some other networks. I think that's what we're seeing in that data. But I have to go back and look at it a little more closely for sure.
Oh no, absolutely. Like that's why it was so startling for me, because
Yeah.
my feed is like so many people, replying and having conversations and tagging people and, adding stuff in. Like I can't imagine that Farcaster is fun if all you do is read it, and scroll like you do some other places. It just seems like you're missing out on the best part of it here, which is the community and the connections and the amazing people you can meet. Because this gives me like early Reddit, early Dig, early Twitter vibes where there were these amazing people that were just one click away suddenly that you might never meet in real life, but be able to have real cool internet friendships with. So I kind of feel bad. Like if there's really 100,000 people just lurking, scrolling the feed, never engaging, I'm like, you're missing out on the best part and what makes this special, right? Like it can change every day and I'll still show up because there's something really cool here and really special. And the friends I've made along the way are worth it, as corny as that sounds, right? So I feel bad if there's really, 500,000 people just doom scrolling the feed. I'm like, that must be so boring. There's so many cool people here to talk to.
That reminds me of.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was saying, so when we were talking to Dan today, he's talking about kind of how when it's like what makes Farcaster special are it's like the relationships you're making and the URL to IRL connection and pipeline. Except like how many people, like when you say to someone like, come to Farcaster because you're going to make internet friends, like how many people does that really speak to? And it feels like that's not going to sell people. It's kind of like, well, that's what you get. Like that's the benefit, but that's not going to be the reason people come because most people like it wouldn't have worked for me. I didn't know I didn't know I had all these friends, internet friends to be made.
Yeah, I think that's a hard sell. And he acknowledged that. It's like that is the biggest benefit, but it's also the hardest sell, I think. Especially from a perspective of what your normal or your previous, I should say, social media experiences. It's usually, part of it, if you think about Facebook, it was for me at least not connecting with new people the way it was for early Facebook. It was me connecting with people I already knew IRL in a new way, or people that I no longer saw in person, like college friends, high school friends, things like that, but being able to still stay connected and family and things like, that kind of aspect. And then you have something like Twitter, where it's more like news broadcast, um, some network as well, and it has like sort of a combination of broadcast and network. And then Instagram's all broadcast, TikTok's all broadcast. So it's really kind of hard to express when that's been the primary experience for a lot of folks, to be like, oh, come to this network. I've met all these amazing people and they're now my friends. It's like a really weird thing to try and explain if you haven't experienced it. I don't know if that's going to change with, maybe that's generational too. I'm not sure. If it's more normal now, and I don't know if anyone can speak to that or if you can speak to it from your kids, Adrian, but I don't see my son making that many friends just online. But he's also not a gamer. He's not doing too much activity online. It's again mostly the IRL and here's where we connect digitally kind of thing. So what's your kids' experience on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, my kids are teenagers, but they're meeting friends through school. Yeah. And my oldest went to college and she's meeting friends in college. So it's pretty traditional. I don't know. I think I also feel like pre-internet. It's like there were certain times. My husband and I were just talking about this, about kind of like why now, like where I have this intimacy with my college friends. I don't see them. We like don't live in the same cities, and I think it's because when we made friends at a certain period of time when we were all going through the same thing, and you're kind of like open to meeting people, you're going through it. And then you go into adult life and you're working and you kind of, for whatever reason, it's just, you don't necessarily go through the same thing at people at the same time. You're not like, there's probably something with the way the brain is developed where like you just don't make friends as an adult. And I feel so fortunate that like here I am in my kind of middle age, and I found Farcaster 2 years ago, and I've made like how many dozens of friends all around the world. And it's so cool. I'm like, oh, this is incredible. There's like so many people to me from like a neuroplasticity perspective. Like I feel smarter. I feel like I'm learning, I'm growing. But when I try to say this to people, like, and I'm like, you should come to Farcaster because you can meet people over the world. And, they just look at me like I have two heads.
I mean, literally, like that was a hard, like it's when we were talking to Carrie. So we had my friend Carrie on the stream on Wednesday, who's a stand-up comedian. And like at one point, she's like, "Is this a cult? Is this a pyramid scheme? Why are you trying to get me to come on to Farcaster? What is this thing?" And it was hilarious. But because it's really hard to explain this if you haven't experienced it. And you just said something that kind of struck me, is like we were going through the same thing. And I think that's why Farcaster's worked so far, is because we have this sort of crypto connection for almost most people. And part of that comes with being a little bit of a rebel, kind of living, you're out in the Wild West. You all hate Gary Gensler. It's like you have these things in common. And regardless of the other interests, we have sort of some of these things. So we're going through it. And that kind of, I think, helps as well to bring people together. But it's, yeah. PG, you were going to say something?
No, I was just gonna say like a similar vibe, right? Like y'all are, and I mean this in the most loving way, like y'all are my kind of nerds, right? Like everybody here is is special in a way of they're like early adopters. They like to try new things. They usually like to be the first to try new things. They're really open-minded. They don't mind chaos. They might thrive in it. A lot of people might have undiagnosed ADHD. Like there's a lot of thoughts I have about Farcaster people, but it's all like good things, right? Like there are people who lean in, and these are people that I don't come across in real life every day. And so then when I meet them online and like feel that connection, and then I'm lucky enough to meet them in person, I'm like, hot damn, I would be friends with these people because they're compelling, interesting people. And they're from all walks of life and all over the world and all kind of backgrounds, but they're all like smart and passionate. And they see that there's a je ne sais quoi here, that even if it has issues, they're like, doesn't matter. We're early and there's something special here that feels like, your first day on Facebook or your first day on Reddit or your first day on Twitter before it became, the monstrosities they are now. Like we all feel that. And it's because this attracts a very specific type of person who I want to be friends with in real life. And I don't walk across those people on the street all the time. So like you're kind of saying, like we're going through something together, but to lean in here and stay here, you have to be part of this kind of special club of people that are like really willing to try new things, because it's not a polished finished product with 100,000 engineers keeping it going 24/7, right? Like updates get pushed on Friday night at 3 a.m. Like sometimes app breaks. Like this is not something that a lot of people could use and get used to, and all of us just go, okay, whatever, restart, wait for the team to push the update, they'll fix it on Monday, not a big deal. Like that's a very special person. Other people would be online being like, the app is broken. It's so terrible. I can't believe this. Delete, boycott Warpcast, like all kind of crazy stuff like that. And it doesn't happen here. We're just like, oh, whatever. Team's making some changes. I'm sure there'll be a cool new button tomorrow. Let's see what happens when we update the app again. And that's, I feel like, why we all keep leaning in and why we keep hanging out here. Because we're like, there's a special group of nerds here, and they're my kind of nerds.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's so accurate. I mean, the fact that tabletop is one of the biggest channels tells you everything you need to know about the people who are hanging out here. And I mean that with so much love because it is, I love, I love my board games. But it is, I think it's, yeah, it's definitely been such a different experience for me in the past 2 years of like making these new friendships, new relationships. And also I pulled away from some of other friendships because I'd rather spend time here. And it's like, and I've definitely pulled away from other social media because I'd rather spend more time here. So that's shifted a lot of things in my life that I don't really think about it too much until I kind of look around. I'm like, oh yeah, wait a minute. I don't even, I'm not talking to random cousin that I never see, but I would see them on Facebook because I'm not on Facebook, right? So it's really because I just kind of that's what, that time is now spent here. So it's really interesting how that's evolving. And this past year doing GM Farcaster has really kind of illuminated and changed all of that and really made me like deep dive, but also so much happier also, and like spending probably more screen time than I ever have, but it's it feels like not like wasted time. I'm not doom scrolling. I'm like you mentioned, like my brain is more engaged. My like energy level is more engaged. There's just some really, like you said, my kind of nerds, really interesting people. And it doesn't bother me when things break at all. But I do see that being a problem and why some people churn for sure. There's definitely some significant churn. Or I shouldn't call it churn, but more like people who, they sign up, they hang around for a little while, and then they just kind of peter off. Um, and some of that is because, they came for one specific incentive, like DGen, or something like that, and didn't see the bigger picture. But, we're still here. The ones who stick around are really special. I'm sure some people are saying that with quotes around it, but I mean it in a good way. Not like they're special, but
Oh yeah, I
anyway.
meant it in like the nicest of ways too.
I
Like
know.
I'm putting
Yeah.
myself in that category, but like you really have to be a person who's like very neuroflexible to do well here because it's chaos. Like things change every day. There's a lot of, airdrop farmers and people who are coming here for the money. And as excited as I am to see like Moxie doing well, like seeing Twitter people, come over and are like, what? You guys are getting paid here? Like, cool. Like, let's lean in, right? I'm like, well, we kind of are, but like, it's not about that. And I'm like, well, who am I kidding? I don't have the nuance to explain that there are financial incentives here, but that's not why you should be here. So I'm like, whatever. If that's what they want to come here for, they will very quickly hang out and either thrive or they'll be like, oh, this is not easy. I'm going to go back to where I was or whatever. Like, I think we'll get a lot of natural churn. So I feel bad for people who came in at kind of some of the peak of the tipping stuff and couldn't see past it and got really swept up in it or felt like it wasn't for them and kind of left. I'm hoping more people will come back now that some of it's settled down and it's a little more subtle and you can just enjoy the experience. And then you might find out, oh, look, somebody tipped me $20 or I've got $50 in Moxie. That's really cool. But if that wasn't why you showed up and it's just kind of, lanyap extra, like that could be really cool and get people to really lock in. So I'm hoping that now that it's not so in your face, that it's more just a little chill, that more people might come back who, like you said, created an account, came for a while, left. And now that the dust is starting to settle, be like, oh, this is a really cool place where there's cool stuff. I want to hang out here more. And maybe if we create those little cozy corners for them, and I can get some of my Reddit friends to come over here and say, no, it's just like subreddits. Like there's channels, they're just like subreddits. It's super cool. Hang out with us. Like we'll see another big wave of growth.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point that you made regarding like Moxie and like sort of the new approaches to financialization being a little bit more subtle, a little bit less in your face kind of thing. I think that after this this first like big wave of excitement, we will settle into something that is beneficial but not overwhelming, which is pretty cool. And it is funny to think about like going back to when DGen first came out and that like craziness followed by frames and all that, insanity. And seeing a lot of big accounts come over from Twitter. And by the way, this is streaming on Twitter right now. So hi Twitter, come on over. It was interesting to see the people who came in, who I got a little nervous about, and then they didn't last very long, right? I was like, oh no, here comes big media personalities who are gonna tread on our turf or whatever. My this is what I was talking about earlier about my on Vibe Check about abundance mindset, where I sometimes lose my abundance mindset and get like the fear comes in. And I have to reset. But the ones who see the greater value will stick around. And what we have seen recently, which has been such a positive and sort of so grateful for, are accounts like Murtaza and Afrochicks and Naomi. Burr, I'd even put in that. Burberry, I would put in that too. Of like they didn't end up on Farcaster specifically trying to financialize or like, dive into that particular aspect, but that's also been a benefit for them. So it's like their content creation, which is so beneficial to the platform, is being rewarded, but it's not necessarily the only reason that they're doing it. And that to me is like best case scenario. We're not going to get that every time, but man, when it happens, how good is that? Like that is really special. So I'd love to see more people like that coming over, like more creators that are kind of have that like area of expertise that they can then own within the space too.
Yes, like I would love to be able, and I still think it's a little hard to onboard people. And I think maybe when I tried a few months ago, it was just bad timing with priority mode and power badges because of all the, airdrop farming that was going on in the background. So I'm hoping that I can kind of try again, because I think, like you're saying, if I tell people like, hey, this is a new kind of form of a social network, right? This is like the next wave of taking the internet back and taking it away from corporations and us owning our own data. And yeah, you got to pay to be here and you got to pay to cast. But if you can create the right community around you, you can find like really interesting, cool people to hang out with. And there is a financial layer where you could actually get paid for posting good content. And right now you make $0 on Twitter and Twitter makes $1,000 off of you. So why not take back that power and at least try it out for a while? Because you might be surprised that like you find something cool. You might find a replacement for a lot of your other social media. You might find a lot of experts that you get to talk to directly, kind of the way Twitter felt in, 2009. And then you might actually be surprised that, every week there's $20 in your wallet from some magic internet money. And that kind of starts that flywheel of like, then they bring their creator friends over and say, hey, like, stop fighting this algorithm, stop fighting that algorithm. There's a better way, there's a better place, there's something more interesting. And if it's not about, oh, we're all going to get rich, we're all going to make it. And it's more like, hey, you might be able to buy yourself coffee all week or a nice dinner every Friday just by being yourself. That's really compelling, I think, right? And if we just get 100 people like that, and then they tell 5 of their friends, like next thing you have 500 really cool, amazing creators and experts who choose to hang out here instead of broadcasting on Twitter and actually have conversations about cool topics. And then we all win, because then we all have a network of like, hey, who do I know that's an expert in XYZ? And it's like, oh, I know this person on Farcaster. I bet they could help you. Like, let's go tag them into this conversation. And then it starts to happen, because we're more than just anonymous, random letters on Reddit, which has a lot of experts, but you don't know really who they are. And then we're not exactly like celebrities on Twitter who are just broadcasting and have no intention of talking back. I feel like if it's something in between, and then you might get $20, like that's a carrot I can start to sell to people.
Totally. Peachy, the irony there is like I would pay $20 for a social network that I got as much value as I'm getting from from Farcaster, and like even back in the day, like, and I've talked about this before, but like I was obsessed with Twitter and I used it so much, and I got so much value out of it that I would have paid to use it. Like I would have gladly. I actually remember actually doing the like this was when they first did I mean it was pre Elon, like they were experimenting with subscriptions, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it because I want Twitter to exist in the world. This was back probably when it wasn't doing so well from a business perspective, and I'm like, yeah, I want this to exist, so I'm gonna, I'm happy to pay the whatever it was, a few bucks a month. What was the rest of my point? I don't remember, but yeah, I don't know. So it's great that we're getting paid on Farcaster. Like that's fantastic. But it's the yeah, I also agree with yeah, I don't know. Is it late? I'm completely incoherent. So
Brain shut down. Okay.
brain shut down.
We'll start to wrap.
You
I
can,
think in a little
you've been
bit.
up since
Don't worry.
quite early. It's completely and totally allowed to just be like, I'm done. I can't have another cup of coffee. I need, maybe like a nice bubble bath at this point. Like that's totally okay.
Yeah, I think we're gonna move into wrap up mode. But I wanted to. Miriam has been with us for most of the day, and she was on this morning for our trivia as well. And Miriam, so I just wanted to ask, like, how was your GM Farcaster birthday day? Did you enjoy everything? And was there anything that like jumped out at you that you really liked? Hopefully she's there. She might be like, just listening in the background. I'm not sure. Oh, there she is. Okay.
It's been the best day of my life, and I just feel bad that you guys aren't getting sleep, but I hope you'll catch up on some. But I had so much fun the whole day. There was a few things I've missed that I'm going to go back and catch up on, but I was able to kind of tune in. I was on a car ride and I just went in on my phone and started watching candle making. So it's been awesome. And you guys are amazing, and happy for his birthday. And I can't believe I got to be part of it. I stumbled on GM Farcaster in February when I first came on to Farcaster, and I just loved it right away. And I would go on YouTube and I watched every like YouTube video of Farcaster and like a bunch of Dan interviews and all that stuff. And then I think one time like a random GM Farcaster YouTube video popped up, and that's how I stumbled on it. And I started watching the videos in the morning, and then realized there was like a live chat, and then the rest is history. And I was so content with my parasocial relationship with Adrian and Prof. And I was like, this is awesome. They're like my pretend best friends and they don't even know it. And this is awesome. And now I'm like, it was kind of cool to just be part of it today.
And now you're one of our real best friends. So there you go. It's been great having you become a part of our little cozy corner. And I've so enjoyed getting to know you, and you're just amazing. And thank you for co-hosting with me last week and jumping on and doing trivia this morning. So just really appreciate you jumping in.
Likewise.
What if we made the show strictly just to make friends?
That's it. That was the whole thing. It literally, the friends we made along the way.
Winning. That's all we wanted.
Winning. We're already winning. That's so funny. But I really feel like I've met some of just the most amazing people. I'd say over the past 2 years, or even a little bit before that, even going back to crypto Twitter before it got really crazy. And some of those discords and some of those places that weren't always healthy and often were toxic, but also had some really great moments. But Farcaster just has more of them. So, but I really have met like some of the most amazing, incredible people ever, and I consider you all friends. So, yeah. I also want to shout out Tori. I see you down there. Thanks for hanging and playing poker and joining in all the different things today as well. So it's been great to see you in the chats. And Peachy, thank you for
Tori.
jumping in tonight. We really loved having you here and getting to chat with you as well on the other side of the world.
Oh my gosh,
we're-
thank you guys for burning the midnight oil.
Yeah, for real. Adrian, what were you going to say?
Just while we're shouting out, Tori just wrapped up this a PDF of a writing hackathon booklet that I'm super excited to drop. Was supposed to be today, but didn't happen. And shout out Zach, it's great to see you on the feed, and I love all your positivity and what you share. And Seattle Crypto, I think you've been there from day one too, so good to see you.
And Symbio, my friend Symbio, I see you down there. Brett was here earlier. My Nounish friends, and they've been super supportive. And in particular, Symbio is like one of our hyper subs, and always super supportive of what we've been doing. And they, so that's why we got a cake today for Nomo, for Nomo Nouns. They got us a little cake, so very sweet. All right.
And shout out whoever else has been hanging. This is my first tavern that I'm speaking in.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I've not really been playing around with it so much, so I can't actually see who is it. It's Fierce someone, and I can't see her name.
Yeah, that's one of the if you don't log in, that honestly might even be that might be me who's streaming.
Got it.
Or it could be somebody else. I'm not sure.
Is it Fierce Bronson? Is that?
No, it's usually just random names. If you see that that type of PFP, it means they're just not logging in usually.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, Fierce Bronson is pretty funny. All right, Adrian, I think it's time. It's time to call it. And but starting at 12:30 a.m. Eastern, we're going to be replaying a lot of our day today, and I'm about to cast out the schedule so you can see when things are happening, when things are going to be replaying. And, ideally at some point down the line, maybe by next year, I'd love to have like this active community that's kind of we're sleeping and they're rewatching stuff that we did during the day while we were awake. And chatting also and connecting. But so for now, it'll be broadcast out, and hopefully some people can catch up on what they may have missed earlier today. So
we can dream.
We can dream. We can dream. And also, really quick, I did pin up at top if anyone missed it. There's a new playlist on YouTube on our channel from all the live streams today. So it's all in one place if you want to go grab it. Or and also the mint for our birthday is up there as well. What did I leave off, Adrian? Anything? And then we'll be back tomorrow morning at 8:30
Only that.
So there you go.
Yeah, the only thing you left off is we're trying to get 1,000 mints, and we only have 100, so we need to just get 900 more overnight.
Overnight, no problem. I think you might have been a tad ambitious with that goal. So, but yes,
I'll say, we're horrible at, I think, self-promotion.
Oh my God, we're horrible at self-promotion. Awful. We desperately need a BD person, a business development person, but also we can't afford that.
But we also don't. The only thing I care about, though, is for someone like when Mariam tells her story of like, I do like if new people are coming to Farcaster, I would like them to be able to find our show, especially if we're doing. And we talked about that. We announced this with Snickerdoodle. We're going to be doing some educational content to help onboard people. But just from a discovery standpoint, and for a while, like I'm kind of curious, like if you go into YouTube and search Farcaster, like I used to do this, like just to see how low in the search results you come up.
Yeah.
And for the most part, people are finding us through Farcaster, so I don't care. But
yeah, we do need to work on our SEO a little bit and make sure we're tagging, and all that kind of stuff. But we're getting there. We're getting there. Year one. And really rough start to year one. So we really haven't found our groove until probably 6 months ago, I'd say. Maybe a little before that, but But here we are. It's been amazing, and it's been a great day, and we really appreciate the support from all of you all and everyone else who's been with us throughout the day. And we will be back tomorrow morning to do a little wrap up of this 24 hours. So go get some sleep, Adrian, and I'll see you at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time.
I will do that. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. And with that, bye-bye.
Good night. Sleep well, ladies. You
Thank
deserve
you.
it.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. It's been fun. Or this morning for you. And thank you again, Miriam. It's always a pleasure. We'll see you.
Of course, get some sleep.
Thank you. See y'all in the GM. Bye-bye.